Hello Year 10, we are starting a new topic, B7 Ecology, and this is our first topic that we're doing from paper 2. So this is where we talked about having a new book ready to be able to start the new paper in a new book. So hopefully you've got a fresh book ready to go. And we're doing this topic because this is the easiest one to teach remotely. Okay, a lot of the content we already know. And so it shouldn't be too challenging for us. Now, sometimes within the lesson, you can imagine there are times when you would be doing work and I will ask you to pause the video at particular points in time so that you can get the work done. So kind of use the length of time of the video as an indicator of how long you're going to be working for, but there will be times when you'll need to pause in order to complete activities. Okay, so we can write on the front cover of our book, B7 Ecology. And it's paper 2, and paper 1 and paper 2 are tested kind of a month apart from each other, so it's useful that we don't kind of confuse our notes for the two topics, and we the two papers, that we keep them separate. Okay, so first bit we're looking at adaptations, and this is something just to think about. If you want to make a note of these, then you can, and remember, of course, because this is a video, you can pause at any point in time if you need extra time to catch things up. So animals, what do they have to compete for? And plants, what do they have to compete for? It's just trying to get us thinking, really, okay? So if you want to have a little think about that, or maybe you're working with somebody via FaceTime or something like that, then you can pause now and have a chat about it. Otherwise, I'm going to go through the 4 things that animals and the 4 things that plants compete for. And you can add this as a note, or if it's fairly straightforward to you, then there's no need to add a note at all. So we've got food, mates, water and space, could be called territory for the animals. And then for plants, we've got light, minerals, water and space. Okay, so like I said, you might want to write a note. That might be straightforward to you, might not need to write a note, but if you do need to, then pause the video now. Okay, moving on. So here's our title for today, How do organisms depend on each other? And if we write the date down as well, please. And you can see that this is lesson 1. Now, while you're writing that, I'll take the opportunity to explain that from lesson 5 onwards, some of those videos were made in the previous lockdown. So when I'm referring to dates and things, just ignore that. But the first, I think it is 4 lessons I'm making now, and then by the time we get to lesson 5, we're using videos that I've previously made. So some of those, there might be references to the day of the week or what the date is, and obviously that's incorrect. But apart from that, everything else is the whole topic. And if you want to go forward with the topic, then obviously you can do, because all of those lessons, once I've made these first 4, will be sat on YouTube ready for you to use as you wish. Obviously use them in the order that I give them to you, and make sure you definitely keep up with me. But if you want to go ahead, then the resources are there for you to do that once the first 4 have been posted. So by the end of this week. Okay, let's move on. So write a definition of interdependence and define a stable community. Now these are a couple of keywords that we definitely need to understand. Interdependence being how individuals depend on each other within an area, an ecosystem, a habitat. Okay, so interdependence is how organisms depend on each other to survive in a food web. Define a stable community. Now we've got lots of different populations of species within a community, and a community is everything that lives there. Okay, so some people get confused between population and community. So population is of a single species, community is everything that's living in that area. And if it's stable, it means that the numbers of each of the populations of species there don't fluctuate very much. They stay fairly constant, and the only thing that would upset that stable community is maybe a new predator or a disease or something that's going to come in as an outside influencing factor and unbalance that stable community. So a stable community is when there are roughly the same number of each species in the ecosystem, not as each other, just the numbers don't really change very much. It would become unstable if there was a new predator or disease. I'll leave that there for a second so that you can write those down. They are quite important to have written down, please. And if you need any extra time, then please pause now. Okay, moving on. I don't think we necessarily need to write anything here. I think this is quite straightforward. Competition can occur between different species and also within members of the same species to compete for resources. And the less competitive species is going to have one of three things happen. Could move to a new area where there is less competition, could adopt a new survival strategy, or could inevitably become extinct in that area. Okay, I don't think we need to write anything there. I think that's pretty straightforward. Just to confirm, if you do want to write some notes, then obviously you can pause the video. Population I've mentioned before, it's the number of individuals of the same species. That one could be worth writing down so we remember population and a community is different. Think of it as the human population. We're just talking about the humans. A community, we tend to talk about our local community, and really what we technically mean, if we're using that word correctly in a scientific way, is all of the different things that are living in that area. So the cats, the dogs, the birds, the people, everybody. Okay, and factors that will affect population size include competition, which we just talked about, disease, which we're well aware of, new predators or predators to the area, and migration. So we can sometimes get those seasonal migrations, and we'll talk about that further on in the topic. Again, this is one of those ones where you decide how much you need to write. I think probably just writing the definition of a population is probably the key point for this slide. If you need any extra time, pause now. Okay, this should be fairly straightforward. I think we should know this from our work in Key Stage 3. Again, this is probably something where you might not write any notes, but you might choose to write something. Okay, the apex predator is also known as the top predator, the one that doesn't have a predator of its own. We've got the producer, because the plant produces its own food by photosynthesis. The primary consumer is the first one to consume, it eats the producer. Secondary consumer is the second consumer, the second one to eat. Tertiary being the third. Okay, like I said, I don't think we necessarily need to write anything from this slide. It depends how fresh it feels in your mind. Okay, moving on. Again, I think this is just a recap slide. Herbivores that eat only plants, carnivores eat only meat, and omnivores eat plants and meat. Okay, another one where I don't think we necessarily need to write any notes. We've got all of the information there, and we can just hopefully remember that from the past. Again, if you need to write any notes, you can pause. Okay, unfortunately this is quite a busy table. You don't necessarily need to draw all of the rows. You could just draw some columns, or you could just, write out those different column headings. So we basically are going to be looking at a giant food web at a moment, and we need to identify the producer, the primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, predator, prey, top predator, also known as the apex predator, the herbivores, the carnivores, and are there any omnivores? Okay, so we're going to create this table, and then we're going to have a look at that food web, and you will need to identify all of the predators, all of the herbivores. Okay, so we'll create that table now. You'll need to pause this to create that table. Pause now. Okay, hopefully you've got your table created in your book. And let's take a look at our food web. Okay, so here's our food web. We can see that there's some interesting points here. One, we've got our producer. Here's our plant. Okay, that's the only producer that's going to go in that column in your table. We've got two apex predators. We've got the owl and we've got the stoat. Okay, so you've just got two of the top predators there. Now, these ones here, the aphid, the moth larva and the vole, they are our primary consumers. They're also the only herbivores. Okay, they're all eating the plants. Okay, so they're primary consumers and they're also herbivores. We've got a secondary consumer here, the ladybird, because it consumes after the primary consumer here. The blue tit is a secondary consumer, also a tertiary consumer, so watch out for that one. We've got the owl is a secondary consumer, and the stoat is a secondary consumer, also the spider. Okay, so hopefully I'm giving enough to help you fill in that table. Okay, another tertiary consumer, 1, 2, 3, the chaff is a tertiary consumer. We've got prey. We've also got prey, prey, prey and prey. And then we've got predators, predator, 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 predator. These three cannot be predators, okay, because you don't hunt a plant. No omnivores in there. And obviously everything in this top region here, not these four down here, those are all carnivores. Okay, hopefully that's given enough for you to be able to complete that table. Obviously you can pause at any point in time to complete the work, to fill in that table. At the end of the week I'll be asking to have a look at some of your work, so you will need to take photos of your work and send it to me. So we're going to have 3 video lessons like this a week, and in addition to that we're going to have 5 questions on Educate to check the week's learning. Okay, there will be a drop-in on our 3rd lesson of the week on Teams, so if you've got any specific questions you can put them there, or you can put them on Share My Homework. Okay, so if you need any extra time on this activity, which I'm assuming you will, then please pause now. Okay, let's think about that food web we had there. Voles are removed from the environment. Explain the impact this has on the remaining organisms in the food web. So if voles are removed, let's have a look. So if voles are removed, what impact will there be? Have a go at doing this. Think it through. You might not write anything for this one, but just think it through. Pause if you want any extra thoughts. Now, if the vole is removed, there'll be no food for the stoat, so the stoat will become extinct. Or it could find a new food source, but at the moment it looks like it just eats the vole. If the vole is removed, there'll be less food for the owl, so it will rely more on its other food sources, the chiffchaff and the blue tit. If the vole is removed, there'll be more plants for the aphid and the moth larva. So quite a lot of impacts there. Don't need to write any notes for that. Owls are removed from the environment. Explain the impact this has on the remaining organisms. So if the owl is gone, chiffchaff and the blue tit become the apex predators as well as the stoat. So their numbers will increase. They'll start eating more of their food, so the spiders and the moth larvae and the ladybirds, so their numbers will go down, and you can see there's obviously a lot of impacts through that food web. Again, no need to write any notes for those, we're just thinking it through what could be the implication. Okay, nearly at the end now. Where does the energy originally come from? Well, we know a lot about photosynthesis now. We know that plants get their energy from the sun, and then they use the processor for the chemical reaction that is photosynthesis to produce that glucose. So the sun is absorbed by the chlorophyll, and that is the original source of everything in that food web. And the arrows on the food web show the transfer of energy. Quite often people get those the wrong way around. So we're saying the energy goes from the plant into the primary consumer. So we have to have the arrow pointing away from the plant and into that primary consumer. Okay, write from this page whatever you feel is important. And you will need to pause the video now. Okay, so you will pause the video on this question if you are looking to complete the foundation question. Okay, so here is the question, and if you are completing the foundation question, pause now. Hopefully you did pause and you've completed that question if you're doing the foundation questions, and here is the mark scheme. So pause now to green pen your answers. Let's look at the higher question. So pause now if you're going to do the higher question. This is a 6 marker. Hopefully you've done that question, and now let's look at the mark scheme. Okay, pause now to green pen. Now that's the end of this lesson. There's only less than 16 minutes of recorded time, but hopefully you've paused throughout and you've completed the activities. Don't forget, you will need to send some photos of your work to me before the end of the week. Okay, hope you found that useful. Why not hit subscribe, and then you'll get updated notifications of new videos. Have a good day. Thank you.